people are treated like their diagnosis. So he was a glioblastoma multiforme. We have our diagnoses, but we're treated like we are them. And all people with the same diagnosis are treated the same. That is what the conventional model does. It sees through that protocol X for Y lens.
Living with autoimmunity doesn't mean settling for less. Inspired Living with Autoimmunity is the show for high achievers who want the energy and vitality to live fully, not just manage symptoms. With your host and autoimmune coach, Julie Houghton. It's time to take your power back. Have you ever wondered how to stop feeling like just another diagnosis, or how to reclaim your power as a partner in your health journey? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Houghton. In today's episode, Andrea Nakayama shares a powerful approach to transforming patient-provider relationships, plus practical tools like the yes, no, maybe list for identifying what truly moves the needle on your healing. I had so many aha moments during this interview, and I'm sure you will too. Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Julie. I'm super excited to be here with you.
I am so looking forward to our conversation, and I would love for you to share, kind of in a condensed way, if you can, a little bit about your journey. I always am inspired by, I know almost all of us came to functional medicine, integrative health, whatever you want to call it, under whichever umbrella, through our own journey or the journey of a loved one. So if you would share, not only how you got into this world, but then a little bit of what inspired you to, create a program and train practitioners and really take it to beyond the next level.
Yeah, thank you for that invitation. And I will try to condense it. So in April of 2000, my late husband, Isamu, was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor, a glioblastoma multiforme, when I was just 7 weeks pregnant. And so that experience took my understanding of the conventional medical model to a different level. There were so many amazing things we received from conventional medicine. We were in San Francisco at the time, and that's where one of the best brain tumor centers is. So we had the best care. And at the same time, it was the first time in our early 30s that we were thrust into the quote unquote medical system. And I was identifying and recognizing some really significant gaps that I had never encountered before. Those first two gaps were that people are treated like their diagnosis. So he was a glioblastoma multiforme. We have our diagnoses, but we're treated like we are them. And the second gap at that time that I realized, I've since realized a lot more, was that all people with the same diagnosis are treated the same. That is what the conventional model does. It sees through that protocol X for Y lens. So that time was what I consider, looking back, my boot camp. Isamu, my late husband, was given 6 months to live. He actually lived 2.5 years, which gave him the great opportunity, and our son the great opportunity, to have a little imprint, even though our son doesn't remember his dad. He's 24 now, but yeah, that imprint was there. And it took several years for me to realize that there was something in here that was my calling. I worked in a very different field. I was a production director in book publishing for companies in New York, working on very high-powered books. And I realized I had to put myself back through school. So I started scrambling, doing lots of education, following my passion, and it evolved and evolved and evolved. I became a health coach. I recognized that there were differences in the way I was looking at a case, at a health coaching case. And I had a coach of my own that was saying, you're doing something different than anybody else is doing. And that's when I started opening my eyes. I found functional medicine. I realized that there was an adjacent way of thinking to what I was doing in nutrition and started to develop my own methodologies, kind of inspired by the Institute for Functional Medicine, but making them my own and through the scope of practice of lifestyle medicine. So more of the dietary and lifestyle modifications that then led me to having great clinical results, leading more people, practitioners, health coaches to ask for training, which, I didn't expect to create a school where I've trained over 8,500 practitioners, but now that is the case.
Yeah. Amazing.
Is that condensed enough?
That actually was. And I want to highlight something you didn't even say because I really know this goes back to your approach. You made a choice all those years ago.
Yes.
Right. So I want to commend and express gratitude for that choice, but also for listeners to understand, like we always have a choice. And if you can't get from your story that life can be really, really hard.
Yes.
But you made a conscious decision to find the gift or turn it into a gift, and not only for yourself, but for, as you just said, it's not even just the thousands of coaches that you've trained, but all of the, it's that ripple effect, right?
Yes.
All of the people that they touch.
Yes.
And I just wanted to highlight that because I think that that's the invitation for anybody listening.
Yes.
Is you, I know, are going to share so much other goodness with us in this conversation, but every day we can make a choice.
Yes.
And need to.
Yes. And I want to thank you for that reflection. And I received that. And I think of that as post-traumatic growth, right? That's the way I think about what occurred. And I do feel like, and I want to highlight this, that the true purpose, which was at the heart of everything I was doing, was in Isamu's name. And so when we find the purpose, the real why of what we're doing, even in our own everyday lives, I don't mean professionally, I mean personally, when that why is bigger than us, we will move mountains. I had to learn things. I still in business have to learn things that I do not want to do or learn, but the purpose of what I'm doing with the actual work is what enables me to do the things that I didn't think I could, would, knew to do, wanted to do. And so again, I think we can be hard on ourselves about not doing it right. But I think some of the work is in finding that deep purpose that enables us to do that next thing.
Amen. I mean, that is what keeps us going, right? In the unknown and in the growth, because growth comes from discomfort.
Yes.
And so if you're comfortable, you're probably not growing, if you're seeking comfort. And so I don't know how one could create sustainable change without being in touch with their true purpose.
Yes. And break it down. Yeah. Break it down. We expect so much of ourselves. And this is where I love functional medicine and I'm in service to functional medicine. But if I may, I'm going to say that it's gone the way of conventional medicine and that it's very protocol based. And so I do feel like we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves as people, especially women, especially type A women with chronic health concerns to do it all right or not do it alone at all. And what I see is that people are frustrated. They feel like it didn't work. They took all the supplements. They quote unquote healed their gut. And I just want to say we can break it down and stack and learn. Someone like you does a beautiful job of helping people to make sure it's right for them. And then next, and then next, and then next. I just want to take the pressure away from this idea of doing it all right, going on this protocol, taking all these things that has become the norm in our field that I think is a disservice.
I so agree. I think functional medicine has become, that umbrella that's gotten just totally washed down. And there are amazing functional medicine
Yes.
providers, and there are people who shouldn't be allowed to say they're functional medicine provider.
Yes.
It's just become, a marketing
Yes.
tool, really. So I love that you say that, and I want to highlight, this is not where I thought we were going to go. Um, the perfectionism, somebody asked me once when they were interviewing me if I found that many of my clients were perfectionists. And I literally giggled and was like, every single one.
Yes.
They may not all present as type A, but that
Yes.
perfectionism is part of it. It is one of the ingredients to struggle with chronic illness to begin with.
Yes.
And I'll take what I learned in business is this beautiful tool for life, which is that done is better than perfect.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
and like, why did they teach me that when I was a kid? Like, why
I,
was that like a
I'm just
business
going to go
tool?
here for a moment. I know we have
Uh-huh,
so many things to
I
cover, but I
know.
think that this is a really important point because people will often think I'm a perfectionist because I have very high standards
Yeah,
and I
not
have
the
high
same.
standards of excellence, but I'm
Mhm.
not afraid to make a mistake and make it progressive. So really understanding that persistence and perseverance are better than perfection. And I think what trained that into me is that my undergraduate degree is in art and design. And
Ah,
in art and design, you put your work on the wall
right.
outside of you
Yeah.
for people to critique.
Yep.
And you then go back and you rework it and you learn and you keep going. And I think that that exercise for me, which will come back to some of our conversations if we get into narrative
Uh-huh.
medicine, it are not about perfection. It's not about creating something or doing something in a way that's there. It's about do and then do and then do. Nobody climbs Mount Everest in a day. It takes years. And we have to think about our base camps and know sometimes we're going up and down just to go forward and learn more along the way. And I think that applies to our health journey in such a profound way that we've lost sight of with everything that's fed to us
Yeah.
in social media and media.
Yeah. And I think that we, especially, for listeners that are somewhere in an autoimmune journey, um, so often we just want someone to tell us what to do,
Yes.
to fix it, right?
Yes.
It's we're still stuck a little bit in that historic Western medical
Yes.
model of somebody else has our answers. And if they
Yes.
tell me what to do and I do it, problem solved. And
Not the case.
we have the answer.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
is not the case. So I want to talk a little bit about, because your approach, you didn't just say, okay, IFM is great, Institute of Functional Medicine. Um, I'm going to open my own version, right? And because you're bringing you and
Yes.
your approach. So let's talk a little bit about, what makes the Functional Nutrition Alliance different. You have you're very systems thinking
Yes.
oriented, which I'm not saying IFM doesn't have at all.
Right.
That's not true. But share with us a little bit about, I mean, your podcast is the 15-minute matrix, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about the matrix.
Yeah, let's talk about the matrix. So I'm going to go back to the three primary tenets that the Institute for Functional Medicine, the founding fathers, and they were, so I'm going to
Mhm.
call them founding fathers, really anchored on. And for me, that is the premise I'm continuing to work with. And again, I was already practicing and teaching
Right.
before I even found functional medicine. It just gave it a different way of, I was like, oh,
Sure.
this is related. So those three founding principles are a therapeutic partnership, looking for the root causes, and a systems-based approach. So a therapeutic partnership goes back to what you just said, Julie. You already know. And I see it as my job to elevate the understanding of a patient to be a true partner in their relationship with any provider, including their medical provider. So I always like to remind patients there are two experts in the room, and one of those experts is you. What are you the expert in? Oh, you're the expert in your body and yourself and your symptoms and your history. Let's figure out how to bring that forward so you can be a partner. Looking for the roots, and I'm going to underscore the S because I think that functional medicine has become very root cause focused, and patients
plural.
are stuck, in this sympathetic dominant. Let me find that root, and I'm going to say it is not root; it is roots. Yes, and that root, that quest for the root is not going to lead to a healing journey. It is a fixation that something's broken. You'll find the one thing, like you were saying, and it all get better. So looking for the roots, which means we say, why is this happening? Not just what do I do about it? And a systems-based approach embraces systems biology, of course. So we're recognizing the gut and the brain connection, the hormone and the liver and the gut. We're seeing the connections inside, but I also have created systems that allow us to simplify what it is we're trying to look at, to think about it more clearly. So those three premises I am very much in service to, but the scope of practice is very different. So functional medicine docs, for the most part, and I'm not talking about all of them, but they recognize that diet and lifestyle modification matter. How they actually double click and focus on the physiological impacts and implications of diet and lifestyle modification is still lacking for many of them due to time, scope of practice. I and the people I train, depending on their scope of practice, because doctors come through the program too, do not diagnose, prescribe, or treat. Instead, we assess, recommend, track, repeat. And we're understanding that deep physiological connection between what I call the right side of the matrix, coming back to the matrix, and that physiological terrain. So in my version of the matrix, I'm just going to pause there and then I'll go matrix. Any thoughts or questions with that kind of just setting the ground?
I'm just cheering you along at this point, right? Of the,
like-minded.
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm just sitting here nodding like, and I love that you and people not like, they're amazing physicians. They're amazing coaches. Like it doesn't matter. We joke all the time. I mean, if listeners are regular, they know, my partner in life is a physician. He's been practicing functional medicine since before it had a name.
Yes.
Like you, right? And then all of a sudden there was like, oh, there's a name for this. And now it's kind of gotten a little washed out depending. But even with us working, when we work together, it's like, okay, the how is still missing. Like his appointments with patients, he spends 2 hours. And it's still not enough time to, there's just too many things. And so I do think this deeper level of, why, right? You can't always answer why.
But you
truly
track and you look and you discover through the lived experience, not through a scale or a piece of paper. I call it the qualitative measures versus the quantitative measures. And I also like the quantitative measures.
I love both. The quantitative measures, it's like, but ultimately I want people to feel well.
Exactly.
And so that's the measure, right?
Yes.
What are the goals, and are things shifting in the right direction?
Exactly. How do you feel?
Tweaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me just talk about this through the matrix. So the way I've redesigned the functional medicine matrix with their permission. So the functional nutrition matrix has 3 sections that I call the story, the soup, and the skill. So the soup is the internal terrain, that body systems area where we're constantly focused on our signs, our symptoms, and our diagnoses. And we can kind of map them on a center wheel that has different physiological areas and start to see connections there, or at least take them out of our head and put them down on paper. But the right side and the left side of the matrix that flank that center wheel influence the expression of that internal terrain. So, of course, the skills section are all the things we're trying to do: sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, stress and resilience, relationships and networks. Yes, 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 yes. And there's no perfect. We need to find out where you are at this moment and make each next step forward. I will always say the non-negotiable trifecta is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. And I know you've spoken about all, but what I realized that we were really skipping past the extreme influence of the patient's story. So when we talk about that, I want to understand, and I want us to understand that the what we're exposed to, again, in media and in our healthcare system, is a hyper focus on what's going on and what do I do about it. And we've forgotten what got me here. How do I better understand how I got to this point in time? And so that story, which in functional medicine we call the ATMs, the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators, is what led me on a quest to uncover how we can more acutely bring attention and awareness as patients to what brought us to this point in time, so that we can be better partners in our healthcare journey. And I just want to focus, because you said that you want people to feel better. And I love, we want that qualitative feel in functional medicine. If we think about the antecedents, what got me here, the triggers, what's this life that I've lived? When I say antecedents, I mean, what did I just come in with? Right. What was a given? Triggers, what happened through my life journey? The mediators are the gold. I see my job as helping people expand their pocket of mediators so they are back in control, more control of their health. And control is a slippery word, but have more influence by saying, this makes me feel better. This makes me feel worse.
Yep.
If I'm going to do something that I know makes me feel worse, I'm in a risk-reward situation. Mm-hmm. I get to make that decision in the moment, but I know. And so I see my job as expanding people's understanding of their own personal mediators. And that gives us back so much more influence.
It's the power. It is what I joke and I say, in 3 years, you're not going to avoid gluten. I'll pick on that one because everybody knows how I feel about that for the autoimmune population specifically.
Yes.
But just because Julie said or Andrea said or you read, oh, gluten's not good for, it's part of the problem. Doesn't matter. It is not going to matter. It's how you feel when we get you feeling, that's the gold. And I love it. You say pocket, I say toolbox, right? It's like when you watch people roll their eyes when you mention stress management, right? And they think I'm saying, avoid all your stressors.
Right.
No, that's not possible. Let's create resilience by, these tools, having that big expanded pocket.
Yes.
And so I love, which I knew I would, I love your approach. And I can hear the direct connect to your story. I mean, It just makes so much sense. This goes back to, again, what's the problem and tell me what to do to fix it is the same diagnosis pill.
Correct.
that we've spent decades, and so we took that same model and we just put different things in those boxes and
Yes,
it doesn't work.
correct.
Yeah. So
Correct. And
I
it's a
love
hard
that.
reframe, right? It's not sexy because we really just want the fix. And I'm
Yeah.
often reminding people, you are not broken. I mean, this is one thing I love about
Story.
regular old serum labs. I
Yeah.
will create a chart for people with the trend of their labs and make everything green and
Trend.
focus first. Trend is important. Look first and foremost at like, let's look at what's working in your body.
Right.
Let's focus for a minute on all the green we see on this spreadsheet in front of us. Like, can we just applaud that for a moment? Because we're so eager to look for what's broken in us.
Right.
And we forget that our body has infinite healing potential. And we actually have a pharmacy within that through narrative medicine, I'm starting to anchor on more that I think we've left behind. Things like belonging and
Mhm.
feeling included and love and joy and being moved. Like
Yeah.
there are things we can access that we don't need anybody else to prescribe to us, that we can tap into, that are not just our story, like, oh, and then this happened to me, and then this happened to me, and then, but oh, when I go to dance class,
Mhm.
I notice that my heart rate variability that night goes up in a
Right.
positive way because I'm exercising, but I'm part of a community and I feel joy. Like
Yes.
little things that I think we've left behind in our incessant quest for this affirmation that we are broken and have to be fixed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that you use the word joy. I do feel like it is a missing ingredient for so many people in wellness. And people look at me like that is always the saddest part for me when I ask a client what brings you joy and they give me the deer in the headlights look.
Yes. Yes.
They're driven, they're, all the things, and they haven't thought about what brings them joy
Right.
in sometimes decades, which is
Yes.
really sad. But it's also really healing, and it's never too late to reconnect with joy, with community, with all these things that I always say, there's all this talk now about blue zones, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
everyone, again, what do they focus on? What are they eating?
Exactly.
Right? Well,
Yes.
how about the fact that these are communities, these are
Yes.
tight-knit communities
Yes.
with, you talked about it before, purpose.
Yes.
The 80-year-old woman who's still teaching and
Yes.
walking up the hill, and yes, they're
Exactly.
eating good food and they're moving, and exercise is just a daily part of life, but it's that community and connection and joy that we have just kind of negated as like, oh, I'll get to that later.
Yes. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that we are actually tapping into it, but we're looking for the big ways, right? So, first of all, you're singing my language because my focus in the narrative medicine, functional medicine intersection I'm doing is longevity for women 50s, 60s, and beyond, because I think at our ages, we've lost a sense of purpose that was ubiquitous for our generation for the first time in history. As women, if we had children, they're not only out of the house, but they may be launched enough that like
Yeah.
we aren't even parents in the same way. We've had careers that we no longer have the purpose, or that purpose is shifting, that significance is shifting in life. And longevity, as you're saying, isn't just about what we eat, what we take, what blue light we're exposed to.
Which
There are a lot of,
peptide,
yeah,
which,
exactly, exactly. It's so much more. And I think there's opportunity for us to reframe longevity and find something different within us. But I also want to say, like, joy doesn't have to be, I live my life in joy every day. I do think
I
there are
don't know
these
that anybody
moments.
does.
Exactly. But I think that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And I also just want to say, one of the things I'm loving about this intersection in my own work and my own writing is where the science comes in. If you look at the science of belonging, and I just want to anchor on that because we'll be like, oh, yeah, whatever, belonging, community, doesn't matter. But it actually scientifically is shown to suppress inflammatory genes.
Yes.
It does reduce inflammation, supports gut brain connection, influences oxytocin and dopamine production. Like
Yeah.
we forget that there's other ways to access the internal pharmacy that aren't about taking, acting, doing more and more and more, which for my type A sisters, I just want to say, like, hold on, you got something more to work with here.
Yeah.
That it's cheap, it's easy, and you can find
and
it.
everybody
in other
has
ways.
it.
Yes.
It is part of how we are designed and created. I want to back up because I was so excited for this conversation that I'm like, more, tell us more. Let's talk, just share with listeners, what is narrative
I
medicine?
know I'm using
Yeah.
this term and it's like, so it's a fairly young and very pedagogical, so academic practice. It's really only in like its 20 or so years. Dr. Rita Sharon is one of its founders and the creator of the program at Columbia University. And it really is in its most basic form a practice for teaching providers empathy. That's how I'm going to really make it like condensed. And I did write an article on my personal website about what narrative medicine means to me, if anyone wants to read a little bit more. Ultimately, it's about deep listening. So for a provider, how is it that we activate our deep listening to hear what's in the synapses of the story we're being told? I believe, and this is where the work is for me, that as patients, we can engage in these same practices to activate our deep listening with ourselves. And this is where we are tuning in. And again, it's not necessarily to the minutia of this happened to me and then this happened,
Right.
although the beauty of the
timeline is
timeline.
important too,
Exactly.
but there's
Exactly.
more.
Yes, it sometimes might just be engaging with a poem or a piece of art or a movie and feeling what comes up in us and allowing time to savor that emotion, that response, which starts to reveal other clues about ourselves that we can more actively tap into to unlock that internal pharmacy. So, narrative medicine is deep listening. Deep listening is something I think we've lost as patients in relationship with our bodies, which is its own therapeutic partnership, in favor of doing what you said, farming it out, giving our agency away, asking for somebody to just tell us what to do and how to do it to make it all better now, please.
So well put in a way that we can all understand. And again, it's for the practitioner and the patient, most importantly for the patient, but both is where the magic comes in. I heard one doctor refer to it as listening radically with compassion.
Exactly.
And I that stuck with me because it's an extra level, right? Like we can all say, "Oh, I'm a good listener."
Yes.
Of course, I'm a good
I'm
listener.
empathetic.
Yeah. But it is radical. It used to just be listening. I truly believe, 2,000 years ago, that was just how we listened.
1,000%. Yeah. And in narrative medicine, we might engage the humanities to exercise that muscle. And when I say that we engage in the humanities, that is where the human condition is being shown. And so we don't exercise the muscle only in clinical care. And as patients, we don't only exercise the muscle in like, what's every little thing about my navel going on? We might engage with another human expression
Yeah.
and then allow ourselves to sink into that experience, and we start to build a radical listening muscle.
I love that, a radical listening muscle. And I want to highlight, because I believe in really, really simple terms, back to that empathetic piece, it's the feeling.
Yes.
It's and as a protective mechanism, most people struggling with chronic illness have disengaged from feeling.
Yes.
And the feeling is where the healing is.
Yes.
And so I got so excited that I'm like, wow, it doesn't get better than Columbia University, right? Like, and to me, this is just another, new academic area that is studying something that's been there all along.
Yes.
We're finding a new approach and a
Yes.
way to train people to help heal other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
themselves and others.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was at a workshop that's part of my program in the spring, and it's a varied room of people coming from all different backgrounds. But there was a young woman the same age as my son who's applying to medical school, and we were in a small group and we were reading a poem and talking about the poem. And a lot of the people from my cohort were there, and we kind of know how to practice this. You learn the muscle. Somebody newer doesn't have the muscle, and that's the fun I have in the workshops I'm teaching, is helping people to start to exercise that muscle. Yeah. But she said, I just don't understand poetry. And I said, this is the beauty of narrative medicine, because the human condition is messy. It's not linear. It's not given to us in a very thought through, this is what it is, like a test, prescriptive. And when we encounter something like poetry, it's messy, it's confusing, but our time to sit with that and go, what's really in here, is that radical listening muscle, because a patient is likely not telling us the story in that linear way, or necessarily even in what needs to be told. And we have to listen again in those synapses. And I just want to come back to the patient, because I work in both realms.
Yeah.
We can be doing that with ourselves in such a beautiful, compassionate way that allows us to tap into so much more of our healing potential that I really do believe we're leaving on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I don't know that you can have true lasting healing without that piece.
No.
You could feel better.
Yes.
But true healing. And then if you think of, again, back to the ripple effect of, and you mentioned this already, but then it's, once somebody has that skill, and you think of the interactions that person has, if as a possibly a parent, a partner, a coworker, I mean, just in general, oh my gosh, then the world becomes a better place again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, wow.
I know it feels very wow to me, but again, like, it's not necessarily the sexiest thing. Like, it is, I teach thousands of providers, right?
Like in the beginning, you talked about like exercising the muscle.
Yes.
And I know from experience, as somebody who always liked that methodical, that when we start to exercise that muscle, we just have to step into that discomfort.
Correct.
Because most of us haven't been exercising that muscle all along.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's really I find it an incredibly beautiful and incredibly healing practice. And again, I know it's hard to access, and it's why I'm offering quarterly free narrative medicine workshops just for people to get in touch with it. Like, I want to bring it out of the academic world that it sits in and, bring it into the everyday in some way,
Right.
give people that
Well, that's
tool
the
and that
point.
question. Yes, for me, it
Yeah.
definitely is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think, again, back to empowerment and responsibility, right? Like
Yes.
as a patient, as a human, but as, to sit on the patient side of, with the power to create the good change and, comes, well, then guess what? I'm also responsible, right? To weigh
Yes.
the risks of, what consequences am I going to have if,
Yes.
um, how is there a way? Is it, through you? Like, how does somebody find, okay, they're really intrigued about this, but how do
Yeah.
they find providers? Because it's almost like a secret tool, right?
Yeah, I think
From the
yeah,
provider side.
it definitely is a secret tool, and I don't know that there's any like place you can go and say this person's trained in. I find that the people who are most interested, I mean, palliative care doctors, pediatricians, like people who are really questioning
So
what's
we need to fill in
occurred
the
in
middle.
medicine. Yeah. And I do feel like, if you're a patient looking to tap into this for yourself, that hopefully what I'm starting to offer more of, whether it's through the writing, I mean, my blogs aren't blogs, they're chapters of my book. Like it's really diving in and asking the question and maybe doing a prompt. And how do we sit with these opportunities that exist within us? I also think we have very high expectations of our physicians these days to be the be all and end all, to be the radical listener, to understand diet and lifestyle modification. We're not asking our doctors to tell us which sheets to buy or toilet paper or toothpaste or jeans, but we're expecting a lot of our doctors. So I really do feel like there was a point in time in my own professional journey that I was like, I have to train more providers to be thinking differently about care. And I'm still doing that very actively every day. But at the same time, I'm starting to realize, wait a minute, I got to train patients to be better partners. So
Right.
we're not only looking to where do I find the
Yeah.
doctor who can do all the things.
Yeah. At our clinic, we actually have as part of the intake, I like to call them clients, patients, whatever you want to call them, literally to sign that they will be active
Yes,
participants in their care. Otherwise, we're not the right fit because
exactly.
then our hands are tied.
Exactly. And I think that besides the interventions that we do need help with from a knowledgeable provider,
Sure.
we also need to or can tap into some of the knowledge that exists within to help ourselves along the way as well. So there's a real interest for me in that next evolution of my own work, which when I say pocket, I feel like in many ways it's putting functional medicine into the pocket of the patient, but within their scope, our scope of
Right.
practice. We all have different scopes, a health coach, a nutritionist, a physician. Those are different scopes.
Mhm.
And a patient has a scope too. And there's a lot of time between the visits and recommendations that you get from any of your providers. And
Mhm.
there's more we can tap into that's within our scope during that time.
I love that. Amazing. And that's what I have always said that in this day and age, a healthcare team,
Yes.
and the most important person on the team is the patient. They,
Center of the matrix.
yes. Ah, Amazing. I promised I was going to let you go on time, so I'm going to do my best to keep my word. I want to ask, listeners are leaning in now because they know what's coming. What is, from your perspective, one step that listeners can take starting today to move the needle and improve their health?
Yeah, I'm going to give us a step that is bringing us back to that self-empowerment. I'm actually thinking of two steps if I can. So,
Of course.
step number one is spend a little time with what you know makes you feel better and makes you feel worse. Those mediators, as we call them in functional medicine, just spend a little time. I sometimes call it a yes, no, maybe list. Like, what do you know makes you feel good? What do you know doesn't make you feel good? And what are you not sure that you've done along the way? And just taking the time to gather that information is really, really helpful and will set you up to be a better partner with whoever you're looking to get support. So that's one thing I want to invite people to do. A yes, no, maybe list. You can do it just about food, everything, whatever you want to do. Yes, no, maybe. The second thing I just want to say, because I think this is really important for us as patients to understand, is that we tend to overload our provider with our signs and our symptoms in the same sentence. And to a medical provider, your signs and your symptoms are actually different things. Your signs can be measured and your symptoms are felt but not measured. So if you're unconscious, they don't know your symptoms. They do know your signs. They can tell if you have a fever, a rash. But when you say, I have a rash and I'm fatigued and I have a headache, and those are like two different languages coming at that provider at the same time. So another preparation step I like to invite patients to do before they see their provider is separate the things that you know can be measured versus those that can't. So you can say, my ferritin's been low for 7 years, but you can also say, I feel fatigued all the time. I get up and I have a cup of coffee and I feel like I can get right back in bed. Like those are two separate things. So I just like to give people that nugget so that we're building the bridge to the person we're asking to be our guide.
I love that. Building the bridge to the person we're asking to be our guide. And that is, again, back to responsibility of, I love it's taking the time, and taking the time take the time to feel, take the time to notice, take the time to record, to prepare.
Yes.
And so, because when we're just spitting out this bucket, it's sometimes going to take even longer to get underneath and figure out what's really driving things.
Yes.
How many root causes there are going on.
Yes.
So amazing. For people that are listening on the go and aren't going to check the show notes, where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, if you head over to Andrea Nakayama on the web, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Andrea Nakayama is going to lead you back to the Functional Nutrition Alliance, to any podcast, this podcast, all the blogs that I'm talking about. Yeah. So Andrea Nakayama is the one place to go that will lead you to the matrix of other opportunities.
The matrix, there it is again. I love it. She's not done, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so grateful. I know I called you Andrea.
Oh, no, totally I'm used to it.
I really appreciate you, just the way you show up. I won't drool again about the contribution you're making to everyone who is willing to lean in and risk a little discomfort. But really appreciate just the way you showed up today for us, and the amount of amazing things you've given all of us to really ponder and perhaps feel.
Yeah, same. You're such a gift to your community, and such a joy to speak with. Thank you for having me.
Truly my pleasure. For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Maybe give it a second listen. and you'll get even more things out of it. I hope you all have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in to Inspired Living with Autoimmunity, hosted by Julie Houghton, your autoimmune coach. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear it. For the complete show notes, links, transcripts, and everything discussed today, visit inspiredliving.show. You can also send in your questions there to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Remember, it's time to take your power back.